Dear Diploma CET aspirants, in previous video we have seen basic concept of processes, process state diagram, process control block. Then we have seen different types of schedulers. We also seen different types of queues we use. Then we also seen what is the exactly concept of context switching. Today in this video we'll be covering operations on the processes. There are two main important operation on the process are process creation, then process termination. You know that when process is being created, that process is identified based on its process ID. That process ID is unique. There are different ways of creating the processes in your system. If you use Linux operating system, we use the fork system call to create a new process. If you are using Windows operating system, we use the function called create process function. Now, when I start my computer system, your BIOS will generate or create the first program, the first instruction, and it's going to create a new process. That new process we call it as a init process. Always init process ID is 1. As I said in previous classes, we have two types of processes. First one is user process, second one is kernel process or system processes. Here the system can have user process also as well as kernel processes also. This init process is a kernel process. When you start your computer system, that init process will have the process ID 1. This is the parent process in your computer system. This init can create a number of children processes. In Unix, as I said, it uses the system call fork to create the new process. The fork system call will create a new child process. In this scenario, the parent process can allocate its memory to its children, but ID of child process and parent process will be different. The child process can use the parent process memory. We use one more system call called as exec. Exec is used to replace the process memory space with a new program. Suppose whatever the memory it has allocated for the child process of your parent process, that I can be replaced with a new program which is executed by the children process with the help of exec system call. We have one more system call in your Unix is wait. This wait system call parent process goes to ready queue until child process terminates. The parent process will be waiting in ready queue until the child process complete its task and it terminates. Once it terminates, again the parent process will start executing. Until then the parent process will be in waiting state. As I said, in Windows operating system, we use the function called create process to create a new process. One question we may expect from this either fork or create process, most of the time he may ask is what is the system call used to create a new process. In option, if you have fork, then you have to answer fork. If you have option as create process in your options, you have to mark create process function. When a process creates a new process, two possibility for execution exist. When a parent process create a child process, there are two possibility are there. First possibility is the parent continue to execute concurrently with its children. When the parent process creates the child process, parent process can execute along with the child process. This is one possibility. One more possibility is the parent waits until some or all its children have terminated. This second option possibility is that the parent has to wait until its all children has to execute and terminate, then it start executing. This is only possible when the parent process calls the system call wait. There are also two address space possibilities for new process, with that is with respect to execution. With no, these two are with respect to address space. The child process is a duplicate of parent process. Yes, exactly, because duplicate means with respect to its characteristic, but not as the process ID. Process ID will be different, and the child process can utilize the parent memory space. The second possibility is the child process has a new program loaded into it. The child process can execute different program allocated for it, then it can have different memory space also. Then the one more important operation on the process is process termination. As when you create a new process, want to create a new process, you are going to use this fork system call or create process function. When I want to terminate a process, I have to use some system calls here. A process terminate by calling the exit system call in your Unix operating system. When there is a exit system call, what could happen? All the resources of the process, including the physical and virtual memory, open files, IO buffers are deallocated by the operating system. When the process terminates by going into the fifth stage of your process state diagram, then whatever the memory allocated for that process will be deallocated, and whatever the files are open for that particular process will be automatically closed. In Windows operating system, we use the function called terminate process. A parent may terminate the execution of one of its children for a variety of reasons. There are some cases the parent process can terminate its child processes. The first reason is the child has exceeded its usage of some of the resources that has been allocated. Suppose if child is using more space allocated by the parent process, that time the parent process can forcibly terminate the child process. The second reason is the task assigned to the child is no longer required. The parent process has created the child process because of some task to be done by the child process. If the child process has completed its task assigned to it, then parent process can terminate that child process. The third reason is the parent is exiting and operating system does not allow a child to continue if its parent terminates. This is also possibility that when parent process itself terminating, then if the operating system does not allow to run the execute the child processes, then automatically the all children of that parent process will be automatically terminated. Then a process that has terminated but whose parents has not yet called wait is known as zombie process. Sometime what happens, a process has been terminated, but that parent process not yet called a wait, that process we call it as a zombie process. When that wait system call will be called when parent wants to wait the child process terminates. Meanwhile, suddenly that uh, child process terminates, then that one of the process becomes a zombie process. Next important concept is inter-process communication. For any computer system, within a system or outside the system, there should be a proper communication. Communication means exchanging of the information. A process is cooperative if it can affect or be affected by the other processes executing in the system. Cooperating processes are also called dependent processes. Non-cooperative processes are called independent processes. The reasons for being a cooperating processes are information sharing, computational speed up, modularity and convenience. Information sharing, if I have some information to be shared, if more number of processes want to share the same information, that can be done using the inter-process communication. Then if I am sharing the same information for multiple processes, automatically the speed of the computer increases. A modularity means how do you minimize the memory space in a given time, that can be done using your inter-process communication. Next, instead of having large number of same copy of the data, we can minimize that data, minimize the data, and it will be convenient for the user or the system to make the computer more speeder. This is the reason why we go for the inter-process communication. There are two fundamentals of inter-process communication we widely use. First one is shared memory, second one is message passing technique. If you see this diagram, the first diagram shows the message passing, second shows the shared memory concept. There are two processes, process A and process B. This, suppose process A wants to communicate with process B in message passing concept. Process A has to send that message to kernel, and that kernel in turn sends that message to process B. Here in this, every time the kernel is very busy doing some other task, what that process A does is, first process A will put that message into message queue. Whenever possible, whenever kernel becomes free, that time the kernel is going to forward that message to process B. It take lot of time, and this process will increase the load on the kernel. So, when increases the load on kernel, automatically the kernel or system becomes slower. To overcome that problem, we are introducing one more concept or model called shared memory concept. Here, instead of sending the memory message from process A to B through kernel, what the process A does is, it uses the some memory in our system as the shared memory that can be shared by a number of process. Whatever the message process A wants to send to other process, that message will be put into shared memory, and whoever wants to use that message, that will be taken from the shared memory. So, there is no involvement of kernel in this shared memory concept. If there is no involvement of kernel, automatically the speed of communication will be faster. The first we will see the shared memory concept. In this shared memory concept, we use the concept called producer consumer concept. Here, producer consumer concept relates to a real time producer consumer concept. If there are more number of producer of any item, then if there are less number of consumers, then again there is a waste of items. The one more possibility is that there is less number of producer, and if there is a high demand on consumption, again there is a problem. What we need to do is, how much producer is produced the item, that much the consumer has to consume the item. If it is so, then we have synchronized the process concept that we will be seeing in next video in synchronization concept. In inter-process communication in shared memory technique, we use the concept called producer consumer technique. In this, we use the concept called bounded buffer and unbounded buffer. In bounded buffer, there is in unbounded buffer, there is no practical limit on the size of the buffer we use, and another type of buffer we call them as a bounded buffer. There is a fixed buffer size. It has the boundary. Suppose I have declared the array as A of 10, then automatically the size of array will be 10. There is a limit. Some unbounded buffer, it does not have any practical limit on the size. Next model is message passing system. This message passing system uses the mechanism to allow process to communicate and synchronize their actions without sharing the same address space. As I said, in shared memory concept, we use the common or shared memory for exchanging the information, but in our message passing concept, we do not use the common or shared memory concept. For every time, we use the different memory for communication. In this message passing system or technique, we use different primitives for sending and receiving the messages. We use send primitive for sending the message. We also use the receive primitive for receiving the message from the sender. Assume that there are two processes P and Q wants to communicate. They must send a message to and receive a message from each other. A communication link must exist between them. There are four important components in this message passing concept. First one is sender, second one is receiver, third one is communication link, and fourth one is the message what the sender is sending to the receiver. In this message passing system, we have different types of methods for message passing. First one is direct or indirect communication, synchronous or asynchronous communication. Third type is automatic or explicit buffering. First we will see direct communication. In direct communication, again we have two types, symmetry and asymmetry. In direct communication as symmetric communication, we use again send primitive and receive primitive. This send primitive takes two parameter, receive also takes two parameter. Here first parameter in send primitive says that whom you are sending the message, and second parameter specifies the what message you are sending to the receiver. Here P is the receiver. Here send primitive will send that particular message to P receiver, and in receive primitive the Q is the sender. Q is going to receive the message from Q. Q is the sender. Receive primitive will receive the message from Q, a message from the Q. Here P and Q are the identifier in this symmetry direct communication. While communication in this direct communication symmetry, a communication link in this scheme has the following property. A link is established automatically between every pair of processes that wants to communicate. The process needs to know only each other identity to communicate. When I want to communicate to other process, I must know the receiver identity and receiver must know the sender identity. If it is so, then automatically there is a automatic link will establish. A link is associated with exactly two processes. In this symmetry, the link, whatever the link has established, the link is established between only two processes. One process is sender, one more is receiver. Between each pair of process, there exists exactly one link. When there are two processes are communicating, there shall be only single link for communication. In asymmetry direct communication, we use, instead of sending, we know the receiver identity, but we may not need the sender identity here. In send primitive, we use again two parameter. P is the receiver identity and second parameter says the what message you are sending to the receiver. The receive primitive again has two parameters. Instead of sender identity, we have the id as the parameter. Receive a message from any process, that variable id is set to the name of the process with which communication has taken place. In this receive primitive, the receiver can receive any number of messages from any processes, but they should have the same identifier value. Then in indirect communication, instead of sending message from sender to the receiver, we use one more component in between them. Those component we call them as a mailboxes or ports. In some question paper, he asked the question on this mailbox. In indirect communication, what is the middle component we use? Middle component or middle system, we call them as a mailboxes or ports. In this indirect communication, when sender wants to send any message to the receiver, the sender first puts that message to the mailbox or ports, then that receiver will not directly receive the message from the sender. The receiver will take that message from the mailbox. Here also we use two primitive for communication, send and receive. Here A is nothing but it is a mailbox name. Send primitive will send a message specified in second parameter to a mailbox A, and receiver will use this receive primitive to take a message from a mailbox A. These are two important primitive in your indirect communication. In this scenario, indirect communication, what is the what are the properties of communication link in your indirect communication? A link is established between a pair of process only if both members of pair have shared the mailbox. If sender has shared the mailbox and if receiver has not shared the mailbox, there should not be any proper communication. In this case, sender and receiver both has to share the mailbox, then only there is a proper communication. A link may be associated with more than two processes. A link may be associated with more than two processes, because through the help of mailbox we can communicate with a number of processes. There is a high chance of the same link can have more than two processes also. Between each pair of communicating process, a number of different links may exist, with each link corresponding to one mailbox. Next type of communication is synchronous and asynchronous. In this synchronous and asynchronous, we use message passing, either be blocking or non-blocking. This blocking is called synchronous, then non-blocking is also called asynchronous communication. Here we use different blocking send, non-blocking send, blocking receive, non-blocking receive. If he set the question paper too bit tough, he may ask the meaning of these blocking send, non-blocking send, blocking receive and non-blocking receive. What is the meaning of blocking send is, when sender sends the message to the receiver, until that message received by the receiver, the sender will be blocked for sending the next message. What is the meaning of non-blocking send? The sending process sends the message and resumes its operation. There is no stoppage at the sender side. It keeps sending the message whether the receiver has received or not. It will not affect it to the receiver. The sender will not bother about the whether receiver has received or not. It keeps sending the message to the receiver. That we call it as a non-blocking send. Blocking receive, the receiver blocks until a message is available. In blocking receive, the receiver will be blocked if message available on the mailbox or somewhere or on the link. If mailbox message available, then the receiver will be unblocked until the receiver will be blocked. In non-blocking receive, the receiver retrieves either a valid message or null. There is no blocking at the receiver side. If message is available, it receives. If message is not available, it may receive the null message also. Next is interprocess communication related to buffering. Whether communication is direct or indirect, messages exchanged by communicating processes reside in temporary queue. Basically, such queues can be implemented in three ways. These queues are temporary memory. For implementing any message passing or indirect or direct communication, the message has to store in between some intermediate node or some intermediate systems. Where the data stores, that those queue or memories can be implemented in three ways. First type is zero capacity, bounded capacity and unbounded capacity. When the sender is sending message to the receiver, if it is passing through some particular memory without storing in that one, such type of memory we call it as a zero capacity buffer. Zero capacity buffer is nothing but it has the capacity, but that data won't store in that particular queue. It just pass through that queue. Such type of buffer are called zero capacity buffers. Second type are called bounded capacity. This bounded capacity buffers has the limited size. If the size of message exceeds the given buffer, the data may be corrupted or dropped at the particular buffer. This bounded capacity has the finite length of n. N can be any value. In unbounded capacity, there is no size on the particular queue. It has the infinite value. In next video, we will be seeing the important algorithms of process scheduling along with criteria, then some other concept related to process. Thank you.